Hi, everyone. I just want to introduce everyone, myself, Cecilia. Before we start everything, just want to do a quick land acknowledgement. I am going to drop down a little link in the chat. And if you click on that link and you enter the area that you are at, you're actually on native land somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and link that so you guys can see. But yeah, we're just to let you guys know we are on native land. If you're in the Central Valley, you're located in Yocut land, depending on which tribe. A lot of native people are here, and a part of this film we're going to show is being based on that. So thank you everyone for joining, and just go ahead and let us know in the chat where you guys part of native land where you're at.
Okay, hello, we're gonna start. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope y'all having a good day from where y'all are tuning in from. But I'm gonna do a quick introduction about the project, our values, and then we're gonna go into the bios of the fellows and the panelists. So to kind of go into the fellowship a little bit, it was designed in partnership with the Pan Valley Institute and Fresno State's College of Arts and Humanities and Department of Theater and Dance for Latinx and Indigenous youth to create a creative project that invokes not only questioning systems of power but also advocating for social change in the Central Valley. So because of that, we established that our values behind our work would be based on showing the Central Valley having rich roots, history, but also addressing what it means to be displaced on stolen land. And we do this by touching on the effects of racism, colonialism, and capitalism that translates to limitations in opportunity and prosperity in our region that are solely based on unjust structures that are cruel to oneself and community. And this is why it's difficult to imagine a different reality because we normalize the abuse and exploitation and injustice that happens in our region. Sorry, and due to that, our values are inherently based on an abolitionist point of view, meaning that we seek and ask our community to imagine a world free from all forms of discrimination, criminalization, and violence, so we could focus on empowering, healing, and uplifting one another. These are the values that we have held throughout the fellowship and that have guided our film project. And I want to thank you all again for taking time to join us today for this special day. And now I will go into the bios for the fellows and the panels. First, we have Meche Pineda, who was born to impoverished Central American refugees that fled their homelands due to violent civil wars. Her childhood struggles led to her studying social movements and advocating for the oppressed. She settled in Merced County after graduating from UC Merced and worked towards healing and educating disadvantaged communities that with art that addresses neocolonization, labor exploitation, incarceration, and reproductive labor.
Thank you, Ariana, for that awesome intro. The next fellow in this panel will be Ariana Cruz, the one and only from Huacaria, Chichameca, Chicana descent, was born on occupied Yocut land. Her parents migrated to Farmersville in Tulare County from Teocaltiche, Jalisco in the early 1990s. A childhood of poverty and violence led her to her involvement in gangs, but she overcame great obstacles to become the first person in her family to graduate from college. Way to go. She earned a degree in ethnic studies from CSU Stanislaus and now works as a mentor for high opportunity youth in Fresno County, focusing on healing, student advocacy, and social change.
Thank you, Meche. And then next we have Cecilia Moreno of Yoka and Mexican descent. She grew up also in Tulare County in the city of Warosi. Since childhood, she has been involved in a number of Native American language and cultural revitalization programs. She speaks Tachi, her native language, and is committed to keeping her native language and traditions alive. Cecilia studies social sciences at UC Merced and continues to work with programs across California that are dedicated to the revitalization and preservation of native cultures and languages.
The next fellow is Maria Torres. She is a 2019 graduate of Edison High School in Fresno. She is currently an art major at Fresno City College with aspirations to pursue a career in animation. She enjoys creative outlets that include photography, storytelling, journalism, and graphic design. She is active in the Youth Leadership Institute.
Thank you. And now we're going to start with our panelists. Just note that Cecilia and Maria are also part of the panels and as well they're fellows. So Rodolfo is a recent graduate of Fresno, where he studied theater and philosophy. He's a playwright, activist, and performer who focuses his work on issues around the Black, Indigenous, and people of color experience, more specifically exploring the intersectionalities of being an immigrant and queer experience. He is passionate about how art can be used for a vehicle for social change.
The next panelist is one of our learning group members. His name is Jesse Singh. Was born in Modesto, California in Stanislaus County. He identifies as Indo-Fijian and is currently a student at CSU Stanislaus, studying ethnic studies. Jesse is also a graffiti artist and goes by the name Heretic Number One. He aspires to be an educator and use his experience to uplift youth of color in the Central Valley through the arts and education.
Our next panelist is Marcel. He has enriched the Central Valley culture with his musical talents, specifically with his band, 7-Year Sleep. And through experience, it's awesome. So if y'all have Spotify and stuff, go listen to him because his stuff is awesome. His band was formed in the late 2016, and 7-Year Sleep band has been organizing events, performing at shows, and has been captivating ears by his interesting style and atmosphere. Marcel considers himself to be community-driven and is always finding ways to host events and aid local projects and other artists. He recently dropped his latest album, The Grand Romantic, which is a gem that can also be found on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Yes, check it out.
Yeah, hopefully he drops that Spotify name. And then our last panelist is Estela. Estela is deeply rooted in the Central Valley and was born and raised in Fresno County. She is the oldest of 5 and the first to graduate from college, earning a bachelor's in liberal arts from the California state of Fresno. Estela's determination and passion drives from her family, who immigrated from Mexico and from Texas in the Central Valley to work the labor camps alongside many other migrant families who contributed to the land she calls home. It is this inheritance that has created a path for her cultural advocacy for immigrant communities. Through the work with the Pan Valley Institute, she has been able to acquire profound understanding of creating spaces for learning and interacting with the opportunity to dialogue and analyze ways of creating change.
Thank you, Misha, for reading the last bio. And now we're going to hand it off to Dr. Gaspar and Jose Eduardo.
Thank you, Ariana and Meche, for that great introduction. And we're here gathering community to really witness the contribution of the participants in this ArteVism fellowship that have been working really hard during the last few months on this love letter to the Central Valley. With my colleague, Jose Eduardo Chavez, we're going to facilitate a Q&A session after we watch the film. So for now, we're going to start watching this film, and it's about 26 minutes long. So get comfortable and enjoy this love letter to the Central Valley from all the fellows in the ArteVism program. So go ahead, Minerva.
The Central Valley is home to many peoples and cultures. At the beginning of time, it was home to many native tribes, one of them being my tribe, the Tachi-Yokut Indians. The Tachi people originated around the foothills of the San Joaquin Central Valley and migrated alongside the change of seasons. We lived in peace and tranquility. We were hunters and gatherers. We respected Mother Earth and her offerings. But as time passed and colonizers entered the valley, we were hunted and expelled from our land. When miners and farmers settled in the area, our tribe was forcibly relocated to Kalinga in modern-day Fresno County.
Hey Sonica, do you want to hear a story?
Sure, of course.
Alright, let me tell you a story about our Yokuts. So our Yokuts are actually from this area. This is our Dumnalis. We had lived here and took care of the land, this beautiful land for centuries. After we had settled here, we were pushed out actually, and I had been moved to Kalinga. Um, we were colonized, and while we were pushed out, we had to leave our homelands and our life, our everything.
And then what happened?
Well, while in Kalinga, we were there for a few years. While over there, we had noticed we had a great life, but then the people who lived there, the Milagani Yokuts, had found black oil.
Oh, wow.
So when we were pushed out of our land from there, we actually had to been pushed down to the Santa Rosa area, the Santa Rosa Rancheria right there in Lemoore. We had to live there for many years as well.
And what about the boarding schools?
Well, as time went on, our children were assimilated into to the white culture or the white life. They had put them in the schools, and they had taken away their culture, their language, everything, and made them cut their hair. They were really losing their culture.
And what else?
Well, as we were moved down to Santa Rosa Rancheria and Lemoore, we had basically lived in poverty. We didn't have the best way of life. We lived in huts and cars. It wasn't that great.
And we also had to watch the lake be drained for agriculture usage.
Yeah, our beautiful Pa'ashi, our lake was gone. That lake was very huge. It was one of the biggest lakes west of the Mississippi. It was our life source. We had food, water, everything was there. It was drained for agriculture usage, and we had to, while living in the Rancheria in 1921 to 1934, when the reservation was established, we had to start a new way of life.
But they couldn't stop us from keeping the language and culture alive, though.
No, it didn't stop us. We actually had become really strong people and kept continuing with our language and culture.
And now we share this land with many different people and many different cultures.
Yes, that is correct. This land has witnessed many stories and so many struggles. We are strong and resilient. We keep going.
I was born in Mexico, but I currently live in America. I was brought here by my parents. My pa left for America when I was 8. He left with my ma, with us and 5 children in total, and told us, "Me voy a América a ganar dinero para traerlos a todos aquí." While he was gone, he had to survive with little money that he earned and the money he mailed us. Ma sold trasmayo de pesca, and I'd help bring money by picking lemons at a farm. Our everyday meal were beans and tortillas. That's all we could afford, and the meat was out of our budget. Until my pa sent us a letter with money and said, "You have enough money to come now, and I can't wait to see you." After we read the letter, my family and I packed to get ready for a 2-day trip to America. To get here, we all had to walk all night through the desert. It was dark. It was hard to see any of the cactus hitting my legs. God, I was so tired of walking, and everyone was crying for water. We also couldn't see any of the animals who lived in the desert. Some were poisonous. Some people didn't finish the trip. Close to sunrise, we finally met up with the people with cars. One guy approached us and asked my mom for dinero. I remember thinking, is she giving him so much money? She later explained to me that each of us cost $300 to cross. I crossed the border when I was 12, when everything was cheaper back then. Later, they put me in a trunk with my siblings and told me, "No one makes a single noise until I open the trunk." It was so cramped and difficult to move. We could feel the car moving by how bumpy everything got. I don't remember how long we were there, but at some point the car stopped. We heard talking from the man and someone else. We were scared for the worst. My heart was beating really fast, but the car started to move again, and I was still scared to speak. But after a while of driving, the trunk opened. I smiled in relief to see my mom and the man. We got out to get in a huge trailer truck with other families. We then traveled to LA. They served us my first American meal, a hot dog. I hated it,
I was born in the Bay Area to broke parents that had to hustle every day to keep bills paid and mouths fed. I'd never known any way other than just enough for tomorrow, but we were surviving. And to continue to survive, we'd have to move from violence, from cages, from the fear that each day would be the last. So we did, and we never stopped. My parents split, but they never planted roots. Consequently, I'd be bouncing around, rootless, until I landed in the Central Valley. Here in the Central Valley is where I began finding myself and my place in the world. The school system did its best to throw me around and push me out. The lack of resources and POC guidance left me dizzy, and money was tight. And I, like many other of my black and brown peers, had a difficult time finding employment. On the surface, this was not our world. We did not belong here, but we were here, getting rejected from work, getting booted from schools, being targeted by police on the streets, hungry, tired, and ill-equipped, and years went by like this. The struggle to exist bound me and my friends together, and my story was a common one. My friends hardly spoke the same language as me, but we'd find ourselves shoulder to shoulder, hauling melons at the remate for cash. Circles like these helped ground me. I found my shade from the harsh valley heat in my community. It took a lot of learning to make the most of what little we had. I learned the neighborhoods, the subcultures within them, bus routes and shortcuts. I learned who would pay for a strong back or a steady hand for a few hours. I picked up chunks of strange languages. I learned the stories of my friends, where they'd come from, where I'd come from. This is how I found myself. This is how my roots took hold. I'd locked myself into the Central Valley soil and began to bloom and sow my own seeds here.
I think society is unfair because essential workers are getting paid minimum wage to put themselves in danger every single day to keep our society fed and running. But if something were to happen to a worker, they could be replaced the next day. I took this picture when I was on my way to break. Here we can see what conditions the people who pack the fruit work under. There were days in which there was a person in each spot, but as times passed, less people started showing up. When I look at this picture, I realize society was unfair because of the conditions essential workers worked under. During the pandemic, we were supposed to stay 6 feet apart. But how can you stay 6 feet apart when there isn't enough space? And even if there was enough space in between each worker, they're overworked to keep up with the fruit. Even though there are plastic windows in between them, I still feel like that isn't enough to protect them. It's unfair that multi-million-dollar companies can't pay their workers a livable wage without them having to work their life away. I think it's unfair that our capitalist society has conditioned us to believe that it's okay to constantly be overworked and work overtime in order to earn enough money to survive. This picture was taken after the day was done. Every day when the people packing the fruit leave, my co-workers and I move the machines and clean under it to take out all of the fruit that fell to the floor. We put the fruit in the conveyor belt where it is taken away. This was a heavy day, so a lot of fruit fell. But there are other days where not as much fruit falls. I'm not sure where this fruit goes. Some people say they throw this fruit away. Others say they use it to make juice. I'm not sure which one is true, but after looking at this picture, I realize society is unfair because of the way we brush off how much food we waste. There are homeless people who have nothing to eat, and I find it unfair how there are companies who don't take that into consideration, who waste a lot of food products and would rather throw food away than to give it to someone in need.
In LA, we met with a friend of Apa's, who then drove us to Parlier, where my Apa's house was. I was so excited to see my Apa. We all ran to him with a big hug. After that, I grew up in my first American house in Parlier, and later moved to Fresno, where I raised my family and live my life now.
Abuela, can we talk?
Sí, mija, ¿qué tienes en mente?
I wake up every morning at 5 a.m., just like my mom. And she gets up early to make lunch for her and Apa every day because they have a long day ahead of them.
You know, the women in Arriba Valle Central said it was going to be a record high this week. The 3 digits, they said.
I wonder why Ama and Appa have to work so hard.
You know, a lawyer works inside all day. Y míralos, they have a nice homes, they have nice cars, and they're even are home when their kids get home from school.
Exactly. My parents had to travel for weeks by foot to get here and work day and night. Yet, we don't have nice cars or a nice home, and they're never home by the time I get home from school. It's not that they don't work hard enough. If they work harder than they already do, they would never be home again. I mean, will they ever be there for my games? Will they be there for my award ceremonies? And to my parent-teacher conference? If they work even harder, then they won't be able to do anything. I can't imagine what else they are going to miss out if they work harder.
You know, a lot of good also comes from your parents working hard, mija.
Of course, abuela. I am very grateful for them. I just think the system is not fair. Have I told you about my best friends, Bao and Chloe?
See, what about them?
Well, we're not like most friend groups at my high school because we're all from different backgrounds. Bao is Hmong, and she says her family had to flee their homeland because of something called the Secret War. She tells me her family doesn't like to talk about those times. I don't understand why.
You know, maybe it was very painful and they don't want her to think about it.
But the thing is, my parents love to talk about the story of how they crossed the famous La Frontera.
Yes, it's resilience, mija. We are resilient people.
And my friend Chloe, she came here from Oakland. Her family had to move here because her parents could not afford the rent in the Bay Area because it was less expensive here.
Well, if they hadn't moved here, you wouldn't have met them, right?
I guess my point is, when we walk to school all the times in the neighborhood, all the homes look run down. The sidewalks are uneven, and some places don't even have a sidewalk. And our parks are not kept up. How can it be less expensive to live here, yet all our parents have to work hard to struggle to put food on the table, clothes on our backs, and a roof over our head?
It's a hard world we live in, mija. That's why you have to go to school, keep your head up high, and work hard to get a little something for yourself and your family.
But for what? The cycle only makes the rich guys richer, and we stay in the same place, only working more and more hours for the same minimum wage. Abuela, this is not just something happening in my friend's house. I think many people in the Central Valley are living this reality, and it doesn't sit well with me. But I'm only 14. I can't vote. My parents can't vote. My siblings can't even vote. What can I do?
Mija, there's a lot you could do without being an adult or voting. There are many ways to create change no matter what your age is. You know, that's a hard lesson I had to learn as a young one. I was told to be quiet and be silent and not even have a voice of my own. Never had that opportunity. But you, mija, you have the drive and the energy, this perspective that is worth paying attention to. You're seeing the world from your perspective, and you can see through things that are invisible to most people. You know, the sistemas de poder, you can see through them. You have observed that many see them as normal. But you know what? It's not normal to be poor. It's not normal to have to leave your homeland because of violence and poverty. It's not normal to come to a country and be so alienated that you're afraid to be who you are or who you want to become, that it leaves you so numb. But you know what? It's our duty to wake up and lead with example for those who have suffered the consequences of these sistemas de poder. It's our duty, mija, to speak up when we see something that is wrong. We can't ignore these things, and they have to be addressed. So what are you going to do, mija, to create a better tomorrow? A better tomorrow not just for you, but for everyone around you.
My quince is coming up soon, and I know a lot of people are going to be there, especially family from out of town and out of state. Maybe I can use this opportunity to talk about this stuff? I know that quinces are usually filled with beer, food, and dancing, but maybe my quince can be different. A quince with food and dancing, but instead of beer, we can have pláticas, conversations sobre our current reality. We could talk about issues me and my friends are worried about and see if together we can all make a better tomorrow for us and by us. What you think, abuela?
Of course I'll help you, Mija. That's a fantastic idea. I'm there for you. Tú ya sabes.
Well, that was the
Thank you.
video. It's fantastic. Thank you for all of you that were involved. I know Dr. Gaspar and I enjoyed the video very much, and it's just really fascinating to see this video being, the stories and the narratives of the actual events that are happening. You can see the face masks, and then you hear the narratives of a different generation and the struggles that they're going through. So just fascinating. Dr. Gaspar, do you have anything to say
No, I
before
just
we
wanted
start?
to invite the panelists, Cecilia, Maria, Rodolfo, Jesse, Marcel, and Estela to maybe turn on their camera so we can see them. And we have a round of questions. And if we have time at the end, it'd be great if the people, the attendees, can write questions in the questions and answer function of the webinar, or also in the chat. And we have also Minerva monitoring the chat, and they can help us if there are questions, and we'll have those at the end. So go ahead, Jose.
Of course, yes. Again, just fantastic piece of art, and that it speaks to the relevancy of events that are happening in the Central Valley and throughout the world, of course, right? So just great work. So we'll start with the first question, and the audience, if you have questions, please write them on the chat, and then if we have time, we'll have them answered. But yes, so the first question goes to the panelist. How were the narratives portrayed in this film different from the ones portrayed in the dominant Central Valley narrative?
Oh, I could go ahead and answer this one. I feel like the Central Valley is often overlooked or forgotten about in media, or even we're just put down. Like in Netflix shows like Hentified, they refer to Central Valley as like a place where it's full of drug addicts. Like people, like there's movies portraying that people rather be homeless in LA than come to the Central Valley. Like I've seen that recurring theme. And often when you talk to people from other places, like from LA or like the Bay Area, like it really feels like uh, to them Central, like there's nothing here, all it is fields, which isn't true. And I feel like the video shows not only a lot of life and beauty within the Central Valley, but it also showed this rich and deep history of these lands, like Yo-Cut land, that we're on, or that I'm on right now, speaking for myself. And then I also feel like the Central Valley is a story of struggle and survival. And I feel like this video really shows that, in the Central Valley, it's a beautiful place, but, it also breeds like people, it also teaches people to survive no matter their situation. So I feel like Central, like that's what binds a lot of us within the Central Valley are these struggles that we all face that we think that we're alone in, but we're actually face it together. So I think this film did a really good job of that, and it was a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, jumping on that a little bit too. The same narrative people have about the Central Valley is always, as a Central Valley person, you just keep on hearing, "I can't wait to get out of the Central Valley," or "Something lies greater beyond me than the Central Valley." But what really was powerful about this video, especially during Marcel's poem, was this idea of planting roots here and being proud and finding yourself through the art and the people and the narratives you find in the Central Valley and the immigration story. And then there's stuff that even we didn't cover that's amazing in here, which is like the queer culture, the art culture, the music culture, all these subcultures in the Central Valley. And it really shed a light on how big the Central Valley is. It's bigger than the perception that people want to have, that is something you grow out of eventually, when it can be something that helps you grow as you plant roots in it. So yeah, I agree 100%, Jesse.
I totally agree what you guys were saying, and I think one of the things that makes me so proud about being also from the Central Valley is that even though I was born in Fresno County, I don't feel like I'm just from Fresno County. I feel like I'm all part of the Central Valley. So we're all one and connected together. And even with the video, even it's so inspiring, and I'm just honored that I was able to play a part in it, and just to tell the stories, these genuine stories rooted from like you were saying, the struggles, the resilience. That was a common that was a word, that was the thread like throughout the story, right? Because it was the resilience over the years, and how we make things work with what we have, and survive. And that's just yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying, and I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Somebody else would like to add your voices?
I can go next. I was just waiting if anyone's gonna go. Just to go like if everyone's saying, it was important to include the native voice in there at some point, because like in the Central Valley, in the whole Central Valley, in whole of California, there's natives up and down, and you really don't hear the voice. And it was nice to bring out the voice of me and my sister who was in the video and saying like, "Hey, we were here. This land was so big and so beautiful." We're not no truck stop, because everyone who comes through the Central Valley is just like, I'm gonna stop at this truck stop, or like this place. Like everyone like, oh, it's a pit stop. We're gonna go to San Fran with all the beautiful ocean, or LA with the beautiful skies and everything. But the Central Valley is just as beautiful as anywhere else. It's just, we're a hidden gem that has been kind of silenced. So it was nice for us to show in the film, like, there's all this here, and then we're still doing our language and everything. We're not quiet, and we're resilient, like everyone was saying in the video. I'll let someone go next.
I can go. So some of the narratives that are created from like big popular companies are just like very like people who have like a huge voice, like movies and such. They focus on the negative areas, so like drugs or the farming that's happening here, but they always portray the Central Valley as either that or like someone boring. They don't portray like much more, but the Central Valley is like filled with so much more like narratives and stories. Like there are many people who have like their own experience, and that should be shared more. So in our video, we focus more on the narrative that like many people here could like relate to. So like the scene with the lady talking about coming to Fresno, like her crossing the border. That was my mom's experience, her personal experience. Like stories like that is like very relatable here, because many people, either their grandma or their mom or their grandparents, like they had to experience that. it's probably like a little bit different, but it's similar. And so like narratives like that, or just like other stuff like events here, like Art Hob, or I can't think of a list. I'm sorry, but storytellings that are much more than just farming and drugs. That should be more focused on, because we're so much more than that.
Absolutely. And I think just a follow-up question would be somebody from the audience asks, what was the process of you creating the dialogue and the script for your videos? And I think, Maria, you answered it. I don't know if any of you want to go into details with that, of how the script, or how did the panelists come up with, or the participants come up with the idea behind this video?
I can go really quick on that one. When we were doing the native perspective, I was me and my sister in a conversation that was done in the household because we were together, but we had used a lot of Zoom meetings within each other. When I was talking to Gina, when she helped me write part of the script in the beginning, of telling her of my thesis statement that I had used in college, and like this is what went on in Central Valley. Not a lot of people know about how the natives are relocated to like Kalinga, and because of they drained the lake, and when they drained the lake they went to Kalinga, found oil, got removed again. So that was the whole story part of that, and that was like through emails, through Zoom, phone calls, like any meeting we had or group meetings with the rest of the fellows, we would talk or whoever and give our point of view. So a lot of things online was done to do the scripts on for my portion as well as other parts of the story. If anybody wants to chime in next.
Yeah, I could go, Ariana here. So a lot, I don't know if y'all got the glimpse of like the last, kind of like screen, like the last names, but we had a group of folks, called, learning group members, and they're basically, people that were down to help us on this project, people from Tulare County, Merced County, Fresno County, and Stanislaus County. So, it's very like, it was just like, it's not just us four, it was like the conversations that we're having with our LG members and also us as a whole, and then kind of kind of getting those narratives in a way to where they fit their, like, Gina, she knows more about like the screenplay right stuff, but that's basically how we gathered, like, it was very raw, like at first, like very raw content, and then like they had to do their thing, their mojos on it, put the little spice on it, and yeah, it was super awesome.
Hi, everyone. I just want to jump in here and say that also, I mean, a lot of the words that you're hearing in those stories are the words of the learning group members and the words of the fellows. Like, we really didn't touch any of that. They're fantastic storytellings. I mean, we had a storytelling workshop in which, in the very first session, Merced wrote a beautiful poem that she had written. And so really we just discovered from very early on that we had some wonderful storytellers in our hands, and that they were gifted in their own way with their words and language. So we just used that in our favor, and they brought on the text, and then we just organized it in a way that made sense for the project. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That's wonderful to hear the participants and the process of coming up with the ideas, the stories. There's some questions in the chat, which we'll incorporate later. And right now, we would like to continue getting the story behind the scenes. And we know that making a films, you are always running up against time and also up against a space, right? You wanted to tell the story in 26 minutes. So I'm sure there's a lot of work that you did, a lot of dialogue that you left out. In thinking back, I wonder if you could let us know what things were left out that you wish, if you had more time, a longer version, what else would you include that was left out? And this is for all the panelists, if you can just address that. So take it away and take the floor as you feel comfortable.
I can go first.
Go for
If
it.
we had more time and the whole thing with COVID wasn't so bad, I know I wanted to include more dialogue with another sister of mine who didn't get to attend one of our meetings that we did with the recording. It just was not enough time for her work schedule, and the whole thing with COVID had her really restricted, and as well as other people that I would like to have joined on to do the native perspective for the Central Valley. If it wasn't so things how they are, it would have been nice to have more people coming on and talking. Like a talking circle would have been a good idea, but we're just so the whole time restricted with COVID. We don't want too much people around. We're trying to keep our distance and try to do the safety precautions. Are like, oh, me and my sister have been together, like living in the same house, so it didn't make sense that we can stay closer and do a video. But I was like, oh, it would have been nice to have like an uncle of mine who lives 2 cities down, but crossing counties, we're just trying to be careful. That was one of the issues that I had on my part. Um, for me. If anybody else wants to go.
I could go. It was real fun to work on it. I did like the music, and it was real cool to kind of meet up and like work that out and see all those stories. But I really would like COVID was really limiting, and it's really impressive to see all that was able to be done. Still trying to keep in mind safety precautions and like how everyone got together to make this art in the middle of like a pandemic. And so it's cool. But if there was more time, I really would have put like more instruments in, because I did like the music. So like I thought the video was tight, and but if I had more time to like throw at it, I would have threw some wild stuff in there, like, or been able to invite like more people, or more like send it out a couple of places and get more people to like come and jam with me and really bring like a fuller vibe to it. But COVID.
Thank you, Merced. Rodolfo.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to realize, but when they first began this fellowship program, it was pre-COVID, so they got hit in the face with this whole notion of COVID. And then as it was going on, they were discovering, now we have to social distance, stuff is closing down. They were discovering the limitations as they were going. So what began as an in-person kind of idea to do a performance of this concept very quickly had to be adjusted into a video, or maybe a distant performance. So it was a lot of having to adjust everything they were doing into a finalized product. So seeing now what they have, which is this, really, really cool video. If they had all the time in the world, they have like these amazing fellows and these amazing learning group members. Like they could have done, given all the time in the world, an amazing like series of this, where you go into like every specific section of the Central Valley, of stories, of things like that. But the limitations were so crazy that it was like what they pulled off right now is really, really amazing, which is really cool to hear. But yeah, they were adjusting during a COVID world where nobody knew what was happening. So yeah, congratulations to them on pulling together all these ideas in the time frame they had.
Thank you, Rodolfo. I wonder if Maria, Estela, or Jesse have anything to add.
I second what Rodolfo just said. I mean, given the time that during COVID and having to be able to do what was done, it's amazing. You think about it, and inspiring too. So, but I would. I mean, obviously we had more time, and it wasn't COVID time. It would have been awesome to do a little part of the quinceañera part, where you actually have a quinceañera with pláticas, and it'd be a different, type of quinceañera, but awesome, a way to engage people who came, and having these pláticas of like, hey, uh, we need to create a better place in our communities. And I think that would have been awesome, of course. But we did what we could, and I think it came out awesome. So yeah, thanks.
I want to add that we had some awesome, fantastic ideas that we just couldn't realize because of lack of technology, lack of time, and people and stuff. But we discussed, for example, a lot of symbolism too, and we had this image of a monarch butterfly that at some point we discussed that it would have been beautiful to have some form of animation that just passed through the scenes and things. So we had a lot of beautiful ideas that, of course, couldn't have happened. And then the quinceañera, we also had a whole aesthetic view for what that quinceañera would have looked like, and it would have been great to make it to the film. But yes, COVID.
Thank you, Gina. Any last words before we go to the next questions, Maria or Jesse?
Yeah, I would like to further on like Gina. So we had like LG members. It was like a group of other like 10 people or 12. I can't remember. But basically, they all brought like an idea, a story idea, and they were all so good. Like personally, if we had more time, like I like the idea of like all of them like creating like their own video, and then we mash it up to like a movie length. But obviously, that's a lot. But each and every one of them, like they had really good stories ideas. And yeah, there was an idea of a whole quince scene where it was just it would talk more about like the problems that we are facing here in the Central Valley, but in a very like good way of transforming that. I wish we could further like include those ideas into the videos, but things happens.
Great. Jose, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. And I thought that it was just really fascinating to see all the dynamics of what you all mentioned, right? The idea of what people have of the Central Valley, and yet you have Estela's or Maria's families that migrated into this valley and now is home to, it's our livelihood. And I speak for my own reality as well, but and just the dynamics of what also the multi-generation stories that you all have. Speaking of Maria, and then Stella, myself, and just everybody in this group, I think we are different age range that we still share some of that experience of being Central Valley resident, and yet we have so many different subcultures, like Jesse mentioned, I believe. And with COVID being brought, which is relevant now, some of the questions from the or also in the chat has been that what are the challenges that you face? And I feel that resiliency comes to mind when Gina mentioned, the equipment, the technology, and obviously COVID. And those are the realities that we face in the Central Valley, right? We want to do all these amazing projects. We have artists like you all, and we have ideas like you all had, but we don't have the resources. So I guess that also brings, what challenges do you face other than that in the fellowship under COVID, and what solution do you find? And I don't know if Ariana and Meche would like to participate there.
Yeah, I could start. Can you read the question again? Sorry, Eduardo. I got excited.
Oh, yeah. No, you're fine. So what challenges did you face, throughout the fellowship under COVID, and what solutions do you all find?
Okay, so one issue I had. So I like to like be in like interacting with people. So COVID really was kind of like, eat, Ariana, you can't be doing all that, so you gotta get comfortable with like trying to make connections like outside of just like the physical like level. And to me, like at first, it was kind of difficult for Meche, Maria, and Cecilia and myself to really like connect like on like a deeper level. But I think just like the struggle like connected us, and now they're like one of my like good friends. So I have some dope friends, and I think that was just very difficult for me. Was just like the like not being able to, and then as like considering my creativeness, I think my creativeness gets more better when I'm around people and I'm able to like I'll piggyback off of their idea or like, you know, start building on ideas. So I think for me, that was like the greatest thing that we overcame. And honestly, I thought it was gonna be difficult for our stories to like come together. But I think we made it work. And I think one of our priorities was to get Cecilia's story like uplifted more, just because like in the film we talk about the lake that was drained. So like Tulare Lake was like the width of like, you know, like as long as the valley, and like it kind of just disappeared. And I'm like, oh my god, I lived in Tulare County my whole life and I've never known this. So I think that was also like super important to uplift Cecilia's narrative, just because it's not really like expressed anywhere else. But yeah, and I don't know, I could popcorn it to people. Maria, you want to go? Betcha.
Can y'all hear me? Cool. Well, there was a lot of things that are very difficult. I think the Zoom fatigue was real. Like I could not do it anymore at some point. It was just very overwhelming for me. And yeah, just like echoing what Ariana said about creating a relation, like a whole relationship, and not like we only met with the fellows with Ariana, Cecilia, and Maria one time, or two times, and even then, like we weren't able to like actually communicate because like it's so weird that you don't want to get other people sick, and it was just very like awkward because I hadn't seen a real face in like so long. And I was much taller than what they thought I was gonna be. It was really weird. Um, and I think also that something that surprised me within it, just because initially this was supposed to be a theater piece, like we were supposed to do theater in our communities, is how quickly we were able to pivot as a community, as artists. We really like pivoted so quickly. We are just like, all right, if we can't come together, we'll make videos. And if we can't meet and talk about these things, then we'll create a billion Zoom calls. And if like Zoom calls are tiring, then we'll communicate through text. Like we were there for each other. And I thought that was really beautiful, but very, very hard to do. And I think that within that, I see how it's hard for other artists to like, I can only imagine how artists feel right now, like other musicians and like graphic designers and stuff like that. It is to get their content out there if it isn't for spaces like this. And so I think the lesson that I got from all of this is that we need to continue to make spaces for art even under COVID, because these are like the stories we need to highlight the most. But yeah, thank you.
Anybody else from the ones to pitch in?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, agreeing with Meche, like I feel like COVID has like really like tried to stunt a lot of artists. Like it's made it really hard to create in such a like weird time. So like in the video, I was working on an art piece, and I just remember just because of COVID, I've been working a lot more. I didn't even get to finish it for it, but I have a little. If you guys want to see a little sneak preview, I can't really see it over there, but it's coming together. It's gonna be finished this week, and yeah, like we just really COVID really brought out like the MacGyver in people. People had to get super creative in like the way they do things, and they had to really work with what they had. And it's we learned about this in class called like rasquache. Like it's really rasquache art going on right now. So yeah, it's very beautiful, and I love this opportunity. I love this opportunity I had to create, and it was nice working with a community of people, especially like-headed people, and we're just able to just like adapt and create something so like beautiful and awesome. And I just hope we get to do this again.
And we've heard from the fellows and other panelists, Estela or anybody who was advising any challenges that you found.
Yeah, I think it's echoing the same thing as people were sharing was, I think, not knowing, and I think Rodolfo, you said earlier, like it just came all of a sudden and we had to start creating changes, not really even knowing how it was going to look. You know, it's almost like you were going week by week, day by day, like, how do we do this? And having a lot of meetings of like planning what's the best way to stay connected, because like Mitch has said, or and Ariana, we're used to being together, like one-on-one, physical, you know, and then just changed. And I think one of the things was like, okay, now it's all Zoom meetings, like everything, everything was virtual all of a sudden. And I think that was the biggest challenging, not been able to meet in person. And I mean, I personally had only met the fellows maybe just from the interviews that we were able to do them from the beginning. And that was it. And then one time they were going to pick up their toolkits, and they were coming just one by one, and here's this stuff, and that was it. I mean, we didn't see each other until months after. And that 2 times that Meche mentioned, but that was really hard. That was really, really difficult, having to do these meetings like that and still be able to try to find a connection. We had our challenges, of course, but I think, again, just like I mentioned earlier, even with the video, the process of making this was also resilience. That's another, because we kept going, you know, we kept seeing, you know, what's the bigger picture? What's the story we want to tell, that we want to share with people, what this is about and the stories of our communities. So I think that that's the motivation I think we all had in continuing and following through what was the main thing at hand of sharing these stories of voices of people of the valley. So I think even though it was challenging with COVID and all, but we made it work. We continued on, and here we are. So yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful testimonies. And now we would like to move to the questions. The attendees are typing a lot of questions and are curious about several things. So we have Edith Mata, who wanted to know if you all got any negative comments from folks from the Central Valley. That's an interesting question. So I don't know if anyone would like to take that, or maybe also positive comment, but the question about negative comments would be interesting, or any comments that you got.
I could take the first one. Shout out Edith
Go
Mata,
ahead.
my homegirl from Bakersfield, that asked that question. What's up? I don't think we've gotten any negative comments. Promoting the event, we've got a lot of love from people and then other organizations that are down with the community. That's super exciting. Yeah, so well, maybe they'll come like after they watch the film, and then if they do have negative comments, we could be like, so what are you gonna do about it? How are you gonna make it better? But yeah, I don't think we've gotten any negative ones. But you know, if they do, hopefully, you know, accountability, we're gonna have to answer. But yeah.
Great answer, Ariana. Anyone else?
I
Jose,
could.
you go ahead, Meche.
I was gonna say, to be real, I feel like this is the project that I felt the most imposter syndrome. Like it was very hard for me to like sit comfortably as a creator or a creative, just because like I was just like, man, is this enough? Like, is any of this that I'm doing ever gonna really portray what's happening right now? And there were so many like narratives that I wanted to put in the film, and so many things I wanted to say, and so many things that like I was like fighting to put in, and it was just impossible. And like, but at the same time, it really made sense to me that this is the best I can do right now. And so a lot of the negative comments like were from me to me. But other than that, it's been all love. And the community has been very loving, and everybody has been very supportive. And so shout out to this whole team.
Thank you. Jose, you want to keep read the next one from the chat? And you need to unmute yourself.
Zoom world, right? So the second question also says, curious what surprised the actors and writers, in this case you guys, found in doing this project. what surprised you guys in doing this project?
I can go with that one. I know the day when we filmed at Wonder Valley. Usually, I'm very talkative on Zoom and in person, but as soon as the camera hit to start recording, I started like messing up my words. I was very shy, and that surprised me because I'm really not that type of person. And I would talk with my sister, and like I would bother me is like I have this conversation every day with people asking about like what happened with the Central Valley Native American people, and I can just talk about it freely, no mistakes at all. And then the camera went on, and then I started reading the paper, and then I would stumble on my words. I would start laughing. I'm like, how did I forget this? And I go back and I watch the thing. I'm like, oh, it's okay. They did a good job. I remember that day just messing up, and I surprised myself. I'm like, man, I'm not this type of person to be so quiet and like just messing up. And my sister said the same thing. She's like, this was your senior thesis paper you're talking about, and you're messing it up on camera. And we were cracking up about it when we got home. So it just surprised me, like things that I talk about all the time. So as the camera hit, I couldn't do it. So that was my surprise on that one. Anybody else can go.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It was just like, well, for me, it was trying to like, oh, how am I going to memorize all these lines? Like, oh, and I wanted to make sure that, well, how I would project it, that it would come out, with the sentiment that I know that the fellows had created these stories, so I wanted to do the best that I could. I was really happy to have our cheerleaders there with Mitch and Ariana, Rodolfo and Gina were there with Maria and myself, and they were, cheering Maria and myself on, like, hey, and helping us kind of like how to, express it in such a way, and then just making us feel like, okay, we're doing okay. And but I was surprised how many times we actually had to repeat it. I know with Maria and I, we were like, okay, wait, stop. Let me do that again, and let me do that again. So, but it's all part of the process. I learned a lot, and that was my first time doing something like that. So it was all good. And just, I think, again, the motivation was just telling the stories, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. We have a question from Robin DeLugan from UC Merced. And she asks, can the ArteVism fellows speak about the collective process of creating the script of this wonderful video? Anyone would like to respond to that?
I can go again on that one.
Right.
Thank you, Professor Duligan. She's actually a professor of mine from UC Merced. The start of the process, we can go through it real quick. We started at the beginning in the film of the script of the Native American perspective. And I remember when we would all started out, I was like, hey guys, I would like to voice out some stuff that's going on in the Indigenous community, because the Indigenous community is not just Native American, like, goes all over, everywhere. But our stories is almost the same, being colonized, being stuff taken away, assimilation. So I'm like, let's talk about it a little bit on this. And then it pertains to the Central Valley because this is where we're at. So the script was like, this is a story that my grandmother told me. The conversation between my sister and me in the video is stuff that we talk about all the time. And it's like always important to know and tell about, because if you don't hear about it, you won't ever know about it. And this is happening right in our backyard, in the Central Valley, the people being moved out. And people, like, we learn about it in school about the Holocaust and like how bad their life is, and like that doesn't happen like anywhere else. Like, it happens everywhere. Like, it happened here. Many Native Americans were in that moved to Kalinga. A lot of Native and babies had died, and they were also put into schools. And I've heard boarding school stories of my aunts and them having their hair soap in the mouth, and they would be hit. And like, there's so much like bad stuff that happens. Like, this is a perspective that would have been nice to start off, but as we move on to the story, we get people who are crossing over the border. Like, it's all connected to the valley. Like, different peoples of different cultures are all connected to one spot. So that's a little bit on that part if anyone wants to continue with that portion.
I could go next. So something that surprised me and the process for the last story, which Maria was kind of that played, that was based mostly on my life. like the conversations they're having were the conversations that I would have with myself at a very young age, you know, like waking up at 5 o'clock with my mom and she's like cooking dinner, like she's cooking like for like lunch for her and my dad to take to work, and like we're watching the news, like Valle Central. What was it called? Valle something.
Arriba Valle Central.
Yeah, Arriba Valle Central. I would watch that since I was a little girl, and I would always be like, okay, what's the weather? What's the weather? And that's kind of how like we touch a little pin upon like, oh, you know, like Estela's saying, like, oh, you know that the lady's saying that's gonna be this hot. So it was very just modeled after my life. And also when I was 15, I didn't ask for a quince. I asked to for my university to be paid for if I ever got the chance to attend. So, and then that brought me into ethnic studies, which would really change my life. It made me see myself as like someone that's not just like supposed to just like be suffering, be poor all the time, and just like, you know, be sad and depressed about like my existence, and like questioning like, why is it that not only am I like this, but why are my 5 friends also experiencing the same thing? So that really was kind of how like I started to untap like the injustice that goes on in the Central Valley. It's just questioning my environment. And I think that a lot of people, when they gain their social consciousness, they forget what it took for them to get there. So for me, I tried to stay grounded on like how I came to like question systems of power. So that's kind of where that story came from. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to talk about the creative process of putting together the script? We'll have time. Okay. Jose, you want to pose the next question?
Yes, absolutely. So for also from Edith Mata, what would you say to those students from the Central Valley that aspire to follow your step? Anybody can chime in.
I got one. So, for students trying to like follow like that direction, or I mean, I was working with a bunch of like everyone there. I mean, I feel like is involved or finished like college and stuff like that, and I didn't. I kind of like the scene at the flea market was kind of like, you know, a little bit of my origin story, but I would really tell students looking to make like a change. I mean, I feel like it wasn't all about getting to like to some kind of like finish or some grand ending, or like it's not about all the things you accumulate. It's kind of like this huge story of just people like doing them with what they with what they have. I would advise students to like ground yourself in your community, ground yourself in like the shit around you, and like move forward with love, you know.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I could go next. Edith, thank you for asking that question. Something that I would advise young people in general. I still consider myself a young person, but I know that I'm an elder in training. So something that I would advise them is question anything and everybody. Like, because you could have, you know, elders in your community that are putting you down, and when you look to when you look for them for advice, their mindset is not like in the mindset to like question things. So never like always know that you're not wrong for questioning people, because if you're questioning things that are like that are messed up, it's always gonna stay the change if you stay quiet. So you know, I work with like seeds in Fresno County, and something that I always try to just instill in them is like, you don't have to be this grand person and go to college and do all this and that. Like that was my path, that was my journey, but you know, that's not the case in the Central Valley. Like it's very different, and I'm like, it's a privilege that I was able to go to college and graduate, but also that's not the reality that I try to push onto students, because it's not realistic. Like everyone has their own talents, but as long as you use them, you know, to spread love and respect around the world, like that's all that's what it's about. When you spread love and joy, and you're okay with yourself, and you treat others the way, like, you know, with self-respect, like I think that's what it is. Like it gets to like the core, like the values is love and respect. And like if companies are not loving and respecting you, like, you know, we got to find ways for them to like love and respect you. You know, like in the most simplest terms.
Thank you for that. Rodolfo, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of what do you say to students in Central Valley? I always think about how underfunded the arts programs are in public schools, and at least specifically growing up from my experience in Fresno. And there's little to no funding for theater, for physical art, for music, for a lot of these programs. And I would just yeah, want to echo the effect that art has on the world. And if you look here, even with this ArteVism fellowship going on here, it's all centered around the idea of art making change and being a vehicle to create waves in whatever topic you might want to cover. In this specific scenario is civic engagement, but it could be, in activism against or for any kind of cause that you're into. So I would really want to emphasize that, because here we have a bunch of different artists who aren't necessarily native to the theatrical scene, but they all, have a physical art or a verbal art or a musical art that they were able to contribute into one project that really created dialogue. And here we are discussing like these kinds of ideas now. And I want to echo for Cecilia, like for, you're sharing this specific story that I had no idea, being a Central Valley native, that people don't talk about. But through art, we're able to reinforce this idea that all stories are valid and all stories should be told. So I would echo that to every student from the Central Valley who would want to, engage in activism or any form of protest to whatever you're standing up for.
I agree with what Rodolfo was saying, and as well as others, Ariana. And I think one of the things, what I will tell also youth, no matter where you're from, whether from Central Valley or wherever you're from, but really don't take for granted from where you are from or you're rooted from. You're never too young to know the stories, the struggles of, what has happened there in the land that you are living in. And I think it's you need to know those stories, because that's the only way we're going to pass it on and preserve those stories and continue on, because that's part of the lineage of the history of where we come from. And so for me, it's just be proud for where you are, and learn what has happened, whatever is the story from your community, the struggles. I think that's very important, because that also gives you a sense of belonging, because those stories create who you are. Once you know them and you keep them and preserve them, then that's there, and then you keep going and share those stories with other people. So for me, it would be that, and then I agree with Ariana. I mean, having knowledge has nothing to do with going to college. That I agree that was the privilege of going to the university, but everybody carries the knowledge, and everybody has that opportunity to share that knowledge, whatever you have. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Now, going back to the chat, Melissa Gibson writes, "This was inspiring and meaningful. How do you all, how do you see building on this experience and moving forward? Any plans for the future to keep acting, making videos?"
I would like to. I would like to see like this become like a series. If we could do another video next year or something, like we could have new voices, more stories from the Central Valley. More art, more life. Show more of the Central Valley, and it would be nice to see like a post-COVID, a time of post-COVID time where things are back to normal, so we can go and we capture the youth, creating, enjoying life, and show how much beauty and love is here in the Central Valley.
I feel like going forward, I would love to see like a lot of collaboration, because this was a good experience for me, you know, like as an artist and Merced, and some like somebody who's making music and putting on shows, and like I'm out there, you know, I put music out, I do the thing, and it was real cool to run into so many different people with different like with different stories and with different mediums to express their art, and to bring it together in like a time of crisis, you know, like a time of crisis and unrest. Like the world is wild as fuck right now, but like this video really came through, and it has so much love and like so much talent in it. And like I would love to see more people, like more people coming together and you know, reaching out for more art or more collaborations, and to see like a bigger buildup in our own communities, because like we got together and this whole thing together, you know, and that's cool. And I feel like we could take these same lessons we learned here and apply them to, you know, what we're doing at home, or what we're doing in our own streets, or what we're doing with our people around us, you know. But in case you guys need more music, I'm down.
Anyone else? Plans for the future? What's next for you all?
I could go next. So this film inspired me. I'm a photographer and I love to I know like photography is like you could take a picture of a bike and it's like whatever, but I have a photography page called Hood Liberation Photography that's based on in the Central Valley in Stanislaus County, in Tulare County and Kern County. So they're pictures that I've taken there, and I love to take pictures of things that have like a significance. So I worked in McFarland for 2 years, and they have like I never seen this before. I worked in McFarland, but there's a huge stretch of just nothing but oil, like oil rigs, like or I don't know what they're called, but they're just oil filled, and it's like just miles and miles and miles, and it's like a Chevron. I think it's Chevron owned, and it's just like getting to understand like those communities that live close to that area are severely affected by like environmental racism because low income families of color live majority in those regions. So like seeing like the injustices that go on beyond just my own community, this has really inspired me to kind of how like the other question to kind of to add it in there was like something I wish I would have like had to like added that we had more time in the film, is to really talk about like oh my god, I lost my train of thought right now, sorry. But it's to take pictures because I'm a former gang member, so I have an experience of like being from the hood, and just like my experience in the hood is very specific, and there's a lot of like criminalization that within our own community that we give, you know, gang members. So it's really tapping into like like why do we like want to kind of like split ourselves off, like oh we're like the good immigrant, and they're the ones over there doing their own thing, doing this madre. But it's like, you know, we need to, you know, have a conversation of like why do we treat people like that, you know, because I had like that's how it was in my family, like gang members were like scum, they were nobody, and it was like, you know, like that also has an effect in our communities. So for me, that's what I would want to take, like that's the direction I want to kind of go in with my hood liberation photography, because I was also a high opportunity youth and was very limited when I was younger, and is trying to get, you know, get tools for those young people to kind of really share their narrative like within our own communities, because they're so unseen and there's so much stuff that goes on in a child. Like a child should not like in 5th grade decide I wanna like, you know, sell drugs. I need to get a weapon. I need to like protect myself. Like that's not normal for a 5th grader to go through that. So it's having those conversations, like those really hard conversations with young people. So yeah, for me, that's where this project kind of like took me as my own like creative artist.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Ariana. Mitch, anybody else wants to add anything? What's next for your artist and creative life?
Yeah, it's really dope to hear Ariana talk. Um, she inspires me a lot. Like Cecilia and Maria, like y'all are so dope. And um, right now I'm working with these young people, and we're collectively called the Young Revolutionary Front. And these little homies and comrades are from like the ages of 13 to 18, so they're really young, and a lot of them are skaters. um but I see this thing that I saw a lot in my youth is like, you got to figure things out, you got to professionalize yourself, like similar to what Ariana was saying, like you got to distinguish yourself from other people. And so we're trying to create a video project similar to this where we highlight like their stories, like as skaters, as like going around also learning about political education, like learning to be anti-capitalist, learning to be um to have an alternative way of thinking. And so it's been really cool to see their art and see how they're coming up, emerging as artists. And Marcel's in that group too. They're all interested in music, and they're very like excited and inspired by him playing the guitar. And it's really cute how they all bought guitars too. But we want to see where it goes, like a mini like ArteVism project round 2 with youth. So there's a lot of potential there. And I'm excited to see what it can lead to. But yeah.
Great. So believe it or not, we have run out of time. So I want to thank all the participants, all our panelists, a big round of applause. Thank you so much for inspiring us, for inspiring the new generation. And it's great to hear that all of you have projects coming up. So I want to give the floor to Gina, our theater professor at Fresno State. So go ahead, Gina.
Hi, thank you so much. So I just want to wrap up by bringing back some closing remarks that from our conversation today. And yes, I am also so very inspired by the conversation and everything that has been said. So I want to just retouch a few phrases that were said by our fellows that I just want to bring back. Ariana said that the Central Valley is more than the perception of the dominant culture. And this video has shown us how that is the case and what those stories are. Cecilia mentioned that the Central Valley is a hidden gem that's been silenced. And that, through these stories, we are trying to bring voice to that. And Meche mentioned that it is important that we continue to make art during the time of COVID. And yes, absolutely. Even though this was at times challenging for all of us, it was also the space, where we get to celebrate right now all the hard work that we did together. So I think that we're all feeling also very inspired and also happy with the final result, because it wasn't easy. And I also want to share that with the audience. This wasn't an easy process. It was hard, and it was frustrating at times, and it was tiresome at times, and it was also, COVID fatigue and Zoom fatigue and all of those things. And we went through all of that and persevered through all of that. So yeah, this is a celebration. Today is our celebration. We're just very happy about this. And then lastly, Estela mentioned that the process of making this is also resilience, right? So our process of making this video is also resilience. And I just want to leave you all with a thought that absolutely art can bring us together, builds community, and more important, we also always hear the phrase saying, that we need to allow youth to find their voice. I want to say that I push against that. Youth don't need to find their voice. They have a voice. They need a space to amplify that voice and to share it with the world. And that's also what ArteVism is about and what we want to do here. So thank you all. Thank you all so much for sharing. A round of applause for everybody, if you're seeing me there. And thank you for joining us tonight and on this very special night for all of us. Good night, and thank you for joining.